Hey guys, today we've got Crystal Levesque, more famously known as Crystal Loves Moto on social media. I'm so thrilled to have her on with me today as we're going to be talking all things not moto. That's right, as much as I would love to chat moto and dirt bikes with her, we're going to dive into another side of Crystal that social media doesn't portray. So join me today and let's get wide open with Crystal Levesque. I've got my phone set up.
It says got it. Okay.
Yeah. Just want to make sure we're like got a few recordings going on. I don't want to lose
We're on
it.
the big comfy couch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Looks super comfy. Okay. Well, it's exciting to finally talk to you. I hope you're
Yes,
doing
I'm excited.
yeah, so we're gonna kind of go into two different topics tonight. One being a little bit of your past with your pregnancy and being a young mom. The other one being your more recent surgery that you just had. But before we dive into that, I wanted you to just briefly tell everyone who's listening a little bit about yourself, because many people who are going to listen are probably going to know who you are, but some people might just listen based on the topic that we're going to talk about. So yeah, like who's Crystal Loves Moto and what's like your claim to fame?
To be Crystal Loves Enduro now, you guys. But so most of you probably know me from the dirt bike world. Coaching women on the scene for Enduro. And I run a page based on dirt biking. Basically, my entire being is dirt bikes. So I haven't really talked much publicly about my personal life. If you guys have followed me for a while, I've kind of thrown out a little bits and pieces here and there. But for the most part, I think most of you follow me for the dirt biking.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And so that's where that's how I got to know you, and then starting to see the little bits here and there that you posted about your personal life. And when I started this podcast, that was kind of my intent, was finding women like yourself who have like a deeper story. And like, the dirt biking is who you are in a lot of ways, but like there's something that drives you to do that and keeps you going. And I think a lot of that's the backstory that, not many people get to see. And it makes you more real and more relatable. And that's kind of what I want to connect women to, like where they can relate to this female dirt biker that's not just talented, but she has a real human story to her. So yeah, I would love to dive into some of that. So going into the first topic, I guess we'll kind of start it off when you got pregnant, if there's any backstory to that on like what brings you up to that moment. But if you start out wherever you feel comfortable in that avenue.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go too much into my backstory, but a little bit of my history, just so you guys kind of are aware. So I grew up where, in a household with a lot of kids, single mom. My mother came from, a time where they didn't really talk about a lot of things, but sexual abuse, stuff like that. So basically, I was the firstborn from that type of situation. So I feel like that instant bond between me and my mom was never there based on that. Just because I think I was just a reflection of that trauma for her. And she has a lot of mental health issues, and it kind of continued down this path. So I won't get too much into it, but it kind of leads up to me being a young mom as well. I experienced a lot of trauma from that, just not having my mom mentally stable. She did the best to take care of us in a sense, but like I said, 4 kids, a lot of abandonment issues for me. Whenever my mom couldn't handle a situation or us kids, we got put in foster care, from the age of 7 to 11 for me, on and off. And, we do our best to kind of understand these situations as we get older. When we're younger, we don't understand a lot of it, but it does affect us later on when we start thinking back to those situations, and a lot of our, part of our journey, the abandonment issues, they kind of go hand in hand with relationships later. So basically being 16 and not growing up in a stable home, not having very good guidance. I was pregnant at 16. I made a lot of mistakes. And thankfully, The guy that I ended up getting pregnant with at a young age, his family was amazing. And I think that's kind of where my life journey began. They took it upon themselves to kind of bring me into their home, and kind of make me feel like I had stability. I never had stability ever in my life. Uh, I don't want to get emotional at all.
No.
So I think a huge part of that was just having guidance, like with a family, right? Sorry, guys, I don't cry often, but um, so I feel like that's kind of where my life began at 16 years old, raising a baby with a family that accepted me. And it's kind of like being the third wheel. You know, you move into this family, you don't know them. We had only been together, a few months, obviously. So I didn't know this family. So for me, kind of being in and out of foster care, bouncing from family to family, and not having my own mom present, I struggled a lot. I struggled a lot just in my own way, not feeling comfortable or welcome. And in the back of my head, I always thought, they're only doing this because I'm pregnant with their son's child. And later on, I realized that they gave me structure, they gave me balance, they gave me an understanding of what I could be. Um, they always kind of talked about my potential and my future, being a young mom. And they helped me with my schooling. They helped me get my first car. Um, so I owe them a lot. And I was an angry teenager. I got to say, I gave them hell. And I was trying to raise a baby. I knew nothing. I fought against everything because I think growing up in my home, I raised myself in a sense, and my brother that's a year and a half older. So I knew best. I didn't want anybody to um, give me guidance or tell me what to do. So that kind of is the backstory on the mom situation. Now, it was hard. Like for the first few years, like I said, I fought them. Um, at 17, I had to get a job and get my shit together so I could, have finances and understand, what it took to be a mom. It's not just popping out a baby and expecting everybody to take care of that child for you.
Yeah.
So the downside of it was at 17, I had to get a job and I became a workaholic. And a lot of that trauma that I talked about as a kid, which I painted a very small picture for you guys of how it all started. Instead of turning to alcohol or drugs or anything like that, I became a workaholic. And I think, in a sense, my son suffered a little bit, not having me present all the time. And I had to rely on, family, my boyfriend's family, to kind of help take care of our child. But in my mind, I always thought, I'm making money. I'm gonna do better than my mom did. I'm gonna make sure he has a life. He has the clothes. Um, he has everything I didn't have. So I'm still a workaholic to this day. He's 21 now, and I just put everything I have into working. And like I said, I think that is just a way for me to escape a lot of those problems that I had growing up, rather than turning to, sorry, it's getting loud here, rather than turning to substance abuse or, I think seeing my mom with those mental health issues and not understanding much about it until now. The last 5 years I've really dug into it and I have a better understanding of, where that stems from and kind of why she's in that situation still to this day. But I didn't want to be that person. I understand we're born into a family, and I think my biggest thing is just that trauma bond, breaking the trauma bond. I talk about that a lot, and moving on to do my own thing. And I won't say I was always a present mom, but I was a working mom, and I had very good structure. And I lasted 11 years with my boyfriend. We were 14 to 26, and that opened up a lot in terms of understanding relationships at a young age, and having boundaries for myself, and experiencing love young and a child young. And I was standoffish with my son, just like my mother was with me. How do I treat him? How do I love him? What do I give him? And I had those same traits of pushing him away at times as well. So I struggled a lot. And I still do. We're close now, but it was not always that way. It was a roller coaster. And yeah,
A lot. And
a lot.
it, like you always can look at it though, and like if this didn't happen, or if you weren't that, or you were more present, how would it turn out, the alternate route? So I think it's so important. It's cool that you're seeing the patterns in your family and trying to like break some of them. And yeah. So where were you living for most of this time? Were you then?
So after I got pregnant, I ended up moving in with his family, and I stayed there till I was 25. We both continued to raise him in the household with the help of his parents, which was amazing because it would have been so hard to just get to work, not have any of my family's support at all. I had zero support. So I was constantly relying on the support from his family. And like I said, I didn't know his family. I had to get to know them while I raised a baby under their roof, and understand, their rules because I was still a kid myself. So at 25, I was making pretty good money. I was always working, and I had a stable job for 5 years. And I kind of looked at Steve, which is George's dad at the time, and I said, I think it's time we move out. We buy a house. We both make great money. We need to kind of go on our own. And I always kind of felt clouded having them raise my child at the same time. I wanted to break free of that. Um, Unfortunately, it didn't happen. There were ultimatums. They weren't met, and I left. I packed my bags. I moved into my own apartment. I had no furniture. I ended up having to work two jobs because I didn't have the support of him anymore. But I'm stubborn. And when I want something, I'm going to put that on the table. Um, and the fact that it just didn't work for us, maybe that was our fate, was meant to work. So it got harder from there because I moved down the road. My son ended up staying there. It was better for him. When I was working, 12-hour shifts, basically as a dispatcher. I didn't have that family support like he did. He had his family, he had that extra income, whereas I did not. So I had to get out and work two jobs just to be able to even afford stuff for the house. Basically, I had a bed on the floor, and it took me a good year to kind of earn enough money to furnish my place. And of course, I'd have Jord over there, and we, co-parented as much as we could. And he was always in sports, always in baseball, soccer. He was well loved. So even though I wasn't present all the time, we had a great family dynamic on Steve's side of the family. And then eventually Steve bought the house, the dream house that I wanted to buy. And he got married and he moved to Chilliwack. And I had to make the decision. I think George was 11 or 12 at the time. Does he stay here with me where I have zero support? And I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting home at 6, 7 o'clock at night, sometimes working double shifts, or do I make the call to let him go live with his dad? And that's the call we made. And that lasted a few years. And I worked my life away. Like I said, I wasn't always that parent. We can't take back, those those moments. But I always look at it as my mom never worked a day in her life. She never gave me anything that I needed. And I kind of wanted to do the opposite. And I think I took it to the next level. But during that time, I always justified it as I don't have anybody. I don't have support. I don't have anybody if my car breaks down to pay my bills. So I just continued to work and bury my feelings. And luckily, George has an amazing dad who we still get along great to this day. And George's 21, and we have a great relationship. And he's understanding to the entire situation. But I can see at 11, 12, 13, kind of him being me when I was that age, feeling like a parent's not there. And although I didn't see it that way back then, I do now, is like I should have been more present. I should have gave up that second job. But would I be here? So it's kind of, I battle with that in my own mind. Could I do more? I think all parents do.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's such an incredible story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
there's lots in here, but I get super emotional. I bury a lot of this stuff and I just kind of keep trucking on. I don't like to cry very often, but I do. I think about these things and where I am now, obviously, and where I was, and I'm like, wow, life's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of like what one of my questions was like, who, like, what has it made you into today that like you really value?
Like I said, I think I just from the day I was born, I think there was just that disconnect with my mom and me due to her situation. And I suffered with that for a really long time. And somehow I was able to kind of take all of that and think of the positives. And the backstory for the bike was George's dad actually bought me my first dirt bike at 22. And I never played sports as a kid. We didn't have money. Um, so it was the first time I'd ever had a hobby besides snowboarding. He taught me how to snowboard and he bought me my first bike. And I thought, oh God, I'm not going to enjoy this at all. And I think I found a lot of relief in riding, dealing with my trauma, dealing with my stress, even as a parent, or, that extra hour that I had where I wasn't working or waking up to a baby. It was my time. And I think that's kind of where the ball started rolling for the biking too, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, I was gonna ask that too, like when biking came into your life, and um, how often were you getting to get out on the bike?
So when George was little, he played baseball, soccer, and then I worked full time. So most of our time went into George's sports. We spent a lot of time after work, weekends, doing the kid thing, the family life, and our son had a bike too. So he had a 50, and Steve and myself had bikes. So any chance that we got as a family, we rode. It was really never about me or Steve. It was always about George and something we could do as a family. So we only got out once or twice a week, probably an hour here and there. But I think when I moved out into my own apartment, I started doing my own thing. That's when I started kind of going out on I still had the bike with me. I wasn't parting with the bike. And I started doing more on my own, right? Getting out riding, meeting new people. So it was started as a family ordeal and it kind of, I sold the bike actually. I sold it. I think I was bikeless for 8 months to a year. Um, and that was one of the worst times of my life. I didn't have anything to deal with all my issues that I had going on, and I just buried myself in work. And then once I got back to riding, it was kind of like, oh, this is like therapy in a way. So I think like, people get addicted to things, addictive personality, drugs, alcohol. I think my thing was just riding. It was like my saving grace, really, right? Having a baby, the bike, it just changed everything about my life. And in a split second, it felt like, right?
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a really awesome story, and I'm sure we could go like so deep into all of that still.
Yeah, it's just a little tiny piece
Yeah,
of the puzzle, but an understanding of kind of, the way it all started, the mom life.
yeah, and that it's really inspiring because I mean, I'm not a mom, but I more and more I get into the sport, I meet more mothers who still put that time in and they get their riding in. And I have some friends who have children who have like disabilities and things like that, and it's really cool to see how it's, I don't know, made these women cope through life challenges, and they're still amazing mothers and they can like balance it all. And I think a lot of people sometimes still think that as soon as you become a mom, you have to give up on everything. And, I don't think that that has to be the case. And
Yeah. And I always think like I wish I was doing it all over again with him. It would be different now. Obviously we can't go back in time, but he has a bike and he never rides it. So sometimes I wish like we had that bond now where we could just rip dirt bikes together, but
do you think that would ever change? Like,
it did for a bit. I mean, he tried, but he's just so focused on the things I was focused on at his age, paying my bills, going to school, keeping a job, keeping his girlfriend happy.
wow,
So
all the
he's
things
got
that
a
a
lot of
mother would
responsibility.
love.
Yeah, he's got so much responsibility. And you know what? The great thing I see in him is that work ethic. I feel like I look at myself sometimes when I look at him and just the way he's driven to succeed. And, Steve's family was always very educated and wealthy. So it's not like he came from what I came from. So to see that work ethic it's awesome, right? It's kind of like, okay, you got some of my traits here.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a good balance and
Yeah.
cool. Oh, I wanted to ask too, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but would you have another baby?
No.
No, you're not?
So, and I'm going to be completely honest and forward, you guys. Um, Being so young, I think it, ruined the idea of me wanting to have another one. Um, so many reasons. I lost, not to say that there's a lot of young moms, you do lose out on a lot. And I was pushed from this life living with my mom right into parenthood and working. I never had a chance to really be a kid because I feel like I raised myself, like I said. So I never had that chance. And I think I'm living that now. Like I'm 38 and I feel like now I'm living. I'm like a kid now, Got really no responsibilities besides myself. Um, and the odd time that my kid needs something. But he's not very needy. So I think when people see me living my best life, that's my backstory, man. I kind of feel like I earned it now. So
Yeah,
no kids, no more babies.
definitely sounds like you earned it. And that's awesome. So nice to
Yeah.
see you like living all that and doing it all.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into topic number two then. And I just wanted to say before we dive into this topic, I just want to make it kind of clear that we're not like promoting surgeries, and these are just stories and not to be taken as medical advice, but just to kind of inspire some conversation and see how your journey was. Yeah. So, what was the procedure that you just recently had done?
So I just had breast augmentation done, which I've obviously been wanting since I was 17. And we all know why, because I was 104 pounds when I had Jordan, or sorry, not when I had him. I was 104 pounds before I had him. And I was 174 when I gave birth to him. So I have a rare blood type, which is different than him. And basically, they give me a bunch of shots so that our blood types don't mix. It did not work, which is another kind of reason why I didn't want to risk having more children. But lots of water retention for me, and I couldn't breastfeed. So being 104 pounds to 174 pounds, I went from basically an A cup to a D cup. Um, and you ladies know when you can't breastfeed, they're just like two big rocks on your chest. 4 months. And the funny thing is, I always remember being like, oh, these are in the way. These are huge. I would never want big boobs. But then when you lose all that weight, and I think I went down to about 120 pounds after I'd had them, you lose everything. And for me, it was just like um, trying to accept the fact that my body had changed at such a young age. I was used to being this tiny little thing, everything was perky, and in 9 months, it all changed. So that's kind of where it got in my head that I'm like, yeah, I really want breast implants, but obviously I'm broke and trying to raise a baby, so it's probably not in the books right now. Kind of where it all began, though.
Well, and that's fair enough. That's probably like a lot of women. And yeah, it must have been really challenging to deal with that at a young age when, your body doesn't normally, you know, change so much, I guess, until you have a child. And yeah, it's a big
Yeah,
shock.
I was still a child, I was still growing. So it's so much trauma to the body. And as women, we're already self conscious and insecure at a young age. And this goes into our adulthood. So, when we talk about breast implants, I think the first thing that comes to mind is everything's sexualized. Men right away are, oh yeah, you're getting big boobs for us kind of thing. I had so many guys in my stories like, when are you starting the OnlyFans? It's like, you know what? Calm down, guys. Not all women do this for you guys. We
And
do
so
it
I
for
can look at
ourselves.
myself in the mirror.
Yeah, like and another thing was a fitness journey. I got heavy into weightlifting, and eventually my chest was just pure muscle. I basically had just pecs. It was just solid muscle. So I'm already pretty like, I'm doing a lot of masculine things in my life, from riding to just being the man of the household most of the time as well. So I wanted balance. I wanted to feel feminine. I started dancing last year.
I loved seeing that, by the way.
Yeah. And I was like, I just want to feel feminine again. I haven't felt this way since I was young. Um, and actually, when I started dancing, wearing my little tube tops, jumping around, nothing was moving. That's when it really got in my head, like, oh man, now's the time. Like you're working 3 jobs. I looked into it a lot. I did the math. I looked into all the pros and cons. I had girlfriends get it done, so I was constantly asking questions about it. And then I thought, you know what? I'm in a great financial situation where I can do this for myself, and I'm gonna go with it.
How did you pick your surgeon? Like what
So
were important to you?
okay, so when I first started out, it was when I actually started thinking about it, it was 3 years ago. My hairdresser, actually, at the time, had told me about UBC, which was basically you are getting surgery by a doctor that's about to graduate, and then you have a head surgeon who's obviously leading the procedure. So I just put myself on the waiting list because she said, you know, get yourself on the waiting list. It could take up to a year. And I didn't think much of it. So I put myself on the waiting list. COVID hit, everything got canceled. All surgeries got canceled. And it was probably a good 2 years, I think, before everything was back up and running. And then I was dancing, thinking more about it, more about it. And I kept calling the lady at UBC, the reception. Hey, is the surgeon back in? Like, is there a wait list? And she kept saying, you know, yeah, it's like a year and a half now, but we'll call you if anything comes up. And eventually, I think so many people got tired of waiting, and you could go to just a regular um, surgeon anywhere and pay the $12,000 and get your surgery tomorrow. But I was persistent. I'm just calling every day, and it's about three. I want to say about 3/4, yeah, the cost. So I think most surgeries are 10 to 12 grand. And at the time when I had registered, it was 6 to 7 thousand. So I think from a budget standpoint too, 3 years ago, I was thinking that was more affordable for me.
So sorry, you're saying at UBC it's 3 to 4 thousand?
No, at UBC it's 6 to 7 thousand
Okay. And then if you were going
dollars.
regular.
And then at a regular clinic surgeon, without the wait times, basically just getting in right away, I think it's around 10 to 12 grand. It can go higher, but
Yeah.
um, I knew 2 people that had actually gone through UBC and had great feedback. So I kind of just trusted the process, I guess.
And what was what was the procedure? Like there's different types of implants you can get. Like what did you go with?
Yeah. So I went in for a consultation in June. And basically, I wanted the doctor's opinion. I ended up lucking out with the head surgeon being one of the best in all of Vancouver. She's actually, she does a lot of reconstructive surgery for um, breast cancer. So she deals with tons of patients. Like, this woman's amazing. So I think I really lucked out with her expertise when I went in. And basically she just said, you know, based on you being athletic, I recommend going under the muscle. The downside to that is weightlifting. So a lot of women get them over the muscle if they really want to continue to weightlift, under the muscle if you're more athletic. The old implants that were pretty common that we hear about often are saline,
Mhm.
which are the filled bags. They move more naturally. But I ended up going with a gummy bear implant. So it's a very hard gel, just like a gummy bear. If you try to rip it apart, it doesn't leak. Basically, you could drop a car on one and it will not explode. They did a bunch of demos for me. So I'm like, you know, I'm a stunt woman. I need like high impact
Yeah.
implants here. Okay. I'm flipping over cars, bikes, whatever. So basically, I laid that out on the table with her. He was like, you know what? You definitely want to go with this. Um,
When you say demoing, like are you going in and like trying them on?
oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm demoing the boobs just like a dirt bike. So you go in and you try them on. So, like I said, I was just pure muscle, nothing there. Basically, I've never worn a bra with wire, just a sports bra my entire life, with like 2 cups inside each one so that I could have a little bit. So I go in and they get me to try on this black, it's like the post-op bra actually. It clips up in the front and they just stuff it until you're like, yeah, I'm happy with those. And then I was doing like jumping jacks in there and just like running around trying to get them to move. And they are just laughing their heads off. They're like, oh my God, we have not seen someone like you before. I'm like, I just want to make sure these babies aren't too big, they're not too small.
Yeah, you're like,
And one price fits all. Yeah, you can go as big as you want or as small as you want. Okay. So I was in there doing the whole shebang. But yes, you can try them all on and then put clothing over top. But of course they look weird because you're just stuffing a bra basically, right? Yeah. It was quite the experience. When I left, I was kind of like, well, what am I doing with my life? And then I went back for the second consultation and I was more pumped up. I obviously was reading up a lot on breast implant illness, and I kind of went down that rabbit hole and got consumed by it a little bit. And then I thought, you know what? I risk my life every day. Every day I risk my life on a bike, from doing film to just all the different activities I'm doing. So it's just like, taking something that you're allergic to and you don't know, like we're all just different. So I didn't want to just read all the negatives. Mm-hmm. I started reading, I joined a website. I don't know, there's like 50 or 60,000 women on it. And I literally went through and scrolled everybody's stories. And I was like, 99.9% of these women are stoked. Yeah. So initially, I was kind of happy going into it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's surgery. There's always risks, and you gotta look into all of it. But
yeah,
remember too why you're wanting to do it, and like everyone's different. So, yeah, you don't want to like over worry yourself either.
Yeah. And I mean, I think too, like me being me, a lot of people were really surprised. They're like, oh, there's this athletic girl. She's riding dirt bikes all the time. And they just don't really see that feminine side a lot. I am not sharing everything on social media. It's just mainly the riding. So how we feel and kind of what we portray are two different things. Sometimes we don't always log into social media and talk about our personal struggles, insecurities. The fact that, I go put a dress on, it just falls off all the time. And my shoulders are always wider than my chest. And, I felt like a linebacker sometimes in a tube top. So there was a lot of things going through my head.
Yeah. Well, and like, it's funny though, because that's just it. Like, you are so confident, you're so skilled, and you are so like naturally beautiful. And I don't think like anyone sees you as like not a beautiful woman. But like, I guess I can see how like, you're not out there posting the most feminine stuff. And I think people often forget that like a lot of us women who are naturally tomboys, like there's still that girl inside of us that wants to like feel girly. Because like your whole life is like taking care of yourself. It's riding dirt bikes, you're putting yourself in positions where you have to be able to take care of yourself, which is very empowering. But there's a core level to it where we do like to feel like we can be taken care of too, and we like to be really feminine. And I think even we forget that about ourselves sometimes because we're just so used to taking care of ourselves.
Seriously, I wake up in the morning and I go into a man-dominating job as well, driving machinery and wearing a toque, no makeup, hair's all tucked back, and you get home and you're just like, everything I do is masculine, riding bikes.
But then I can tell there's a girly side of you, because I mean, look at your beautiful wall and your pillows.
Yeah, I'm like the Martha. Yeah, I am very Martha Stewartish, and I think that's my mom's side. Like, yeah, my house is hilarious. It's like there's a couple bikes over here in the corner, and I've got photos. I try to do my hair as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, I definitely embraced both sides, but I soon realized how awkward I was in dance. And like, you're a professional dancer, like, put a tomboy in the middle of a dance studio and it is not home for me. Okay, like, put me on a bike, I'm good. Put me in a studio with a bunch of like cheerleaders who were just fabulous at dancing, and my everything about me was awkward. And I had to learn so much about just relaxing, that inner confidence. Don't worry, no one's judging, you know, everyone's there to do what you're. And then I joined pole, and that really changed everything for me. I didn't look at it as like, yeah, I want to buy a pole and start dancing and be, you know, Canada's next top stripper. But I definitely was focused more on like, I want to work my core. This looks fun. I want to spin around a pole.
It
So,
is
but
so
trying
fun.
to relax and just flow with it and not laugh or bring out that tomboy side, that was a challenge on its own, right? And then I soon realized, like, damn, girl, you can dance if you
That's
want
awesome.
to.
Oh man, if I come over to Vancouver, we're gonna go do a dance class together.
You got it. I start up soon. I'm like, this is the season where I get to dance. So I'm
Oh,
excited. Like Dance Mondays, we're bringing them back. But honestly, I think too, with not being able to ride obviously as much in the winter, it it makes me feel like I can get my stress out. I can do something. And it's a group sport, which I'm not really used to unless I'm teaching women, right? It's not a solo sport. Crystal has to participate as a group.
oh man, I totally understand that. That's like, yeah, that was one of my challenges being a cheerleader. I was like, isn't it just like I can do what I want? Like, no, you have to like follow the rules. You're part of
And
it.
you know,
You
because I
don't
think
get to be like, oh man, it was just like put on a uniform. It's like you have to look a certain way, you talk a certain way, you smile a certain way. There's no being you, Kayla. It's like you're one of many.
yeah, you're a prime example of like that tomboy beautiful woman as well, because um you know, coming from the dance, you're out on the field, you know, in these amazing outfits, by the way, and then going onto a dirt bike the next week, and then you're doing backflips on your freaking downhill the next week, and then back to dance. Like, we can be a lot of things, you know.
Yeah, we can wear a lot of hats and a lot
We
of
can
big.
wear a lot of hats. But I think like at 38, I'm going to be 39 soon. This is just a side of me that was never there till now. So it's been about a year where I've kind of been tapping into that girly side, and I'm freaking loving it.
I love that. I can't wait to see more of that.
I will embarrass myself for you guys. Don't worry.
Wonderful. um, so let's go into like the actual surgery day. How was that for you?
Okay, so I'm not like extremely nervous. I was trying to like be positive, and Kate, she ended up driving me in, and anybody that knows Kate, she's kind of like, I don't know how to explain her. She's like, you know, the horoscope lady. She's always positive. She's always reading your horoscope, and just the most positive person ever. So I'm like, she would be the perfect person to calm me down on the drive in. So she took me, dropped me off. Basically, I arrived downtown, and I was 7 a.m. appointment. And they kind of just, they don't tell you a lot. They just, you know, the less is better, I think. They just kind of give you the basics. We're going to knock you out. This is what's going to happen. You're going to wake up feeling a little dizzy. So I found it really simple. I just basically was lying there on the table, blabbing on, and all of a sudden I woke up and I had boobs.
Were they playing music when you got put under, or was it just like?
No, so we were talking about dirt bikes, and I think they were just trying to keep me calm because I have really bad anxiety. And I was saying it doesn't stem from like being nervous. I think it just stems from like the unknown. Like, will I wake up from this? Your life just flashes. Like,
Yeah.
are these boobs worth everything I'm about to go through? Um, and it's just so quick. You're just asleep like that, right? And it was no different than my arm when I had that crazy surgery on my arm, which was probably 10 times worse, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I
So
forgot
I
about.
kind of knew what I was getting into, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. A little story about me when so anyone who doesn't know, not a lot of people know, but I had rhinoplasty when I was 21. And
I
so
didn't know that. So that was cool.
yeah,
I
yeah.
felt like, wow, okay, I can relate to this.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I've always wanted to have a conversation like this because that was like a big moment in my life and I'll probably start talking a little bit more about that another time, but I remember going into the surgery and I still didn't know, like I hadn't confirmed with my surgeon what my nose was going to look like because we had my mom came into the appointment the day before. She's telling him, "I want it to look like this." And I'm saying, I want it to look like this, and he's saying we should do it like this. And my mom started having an argument, and I was like, and then he's like, all right, okay, time's up. And like we walked out, and I was like, I just still don't know what we decided on. Like, what the fuck am I getting? I was so
I know.
I was like, I don't know what's happening. And so I went into surgery the next day, and I'm like in the mirror, and I'm like, oh, I got my gown on, and I've come out of the room. He's like, you all ready? And I was like, just don't make me look bad. Like that was all I could say. I was like, just don't make me look bad. I was like, I don't know what we're going in for. So yeah, and then I didn't get to know what it looked like for like a whole week. I mean, you still
Oh
don't
God.
know a year after like what your actual nose looks like because it's just so puffy and changes.
It looks hot. It looks
Yeah.
hot.
Well
It turned out.
Yeah, that's like my
You're
little.
right. You have no idea what you're going into, right?
It really is.
And I think we talked a bit about this, about like our parents' reaction. My mom was super unsupportive. She basically sent me an email that said, you must be insecure to waste that much money. And so those thoughts were in my head when I was going in too, right? And I know you kind of struggled a little bit about that too. It's just like we just want our parents' acceptance for the choices we make, right?
Yeah, and it's like it's not like you want them to be like, I really hope you go get your boobs done when you're older. Like you don't want them to be like pushing it, but you know, if you can have that conversation and explain, like my mom's big thing was you're so vain. I was
Yeah.
like, and most people didn't even notice when I had it done, which was surprising. I came out of that like so many people were just like, what, you had your nose done? And I was like, whoa, that's how much it showed. It was so much for myself and what I
Yeah.
noticed. I'm sure even with you, like if you hadn't told people, not many
Yes.
people would be like, oh, Crystal, you had your boobs in, because like
Yeah.
your own, it's your own self who sees that, and it's your own insecurities. And
Yeah.
even though you probably love yourself regardless, it's like, is that gonna make your life better? Well,
Yeah.
then go.
And that was kind of like, should I talk about it? Should I not talk about it? That's a great point you brought up. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, are people going to notice when I'm riding? Like my jersey going to look tighter? Like, is somebody going to call me out on social media for this? And I'm just an open book. I'm just going to say it how it is. And you would be amazed how many women, Enduro riders, messaged me that have had this. And some of them much double the size of what I've got done. And I would have never known because they do such a great job of, you know, keeping that off social media. It's hiding under the gear, the chest protectors. And there were some people I was actually mind blown, and they were sending me like photos and bikinis and stuff that they don't post on social media to be like, look at how much you can hide this, Crystal. It's like,
Yeah.
and I think when you do it for the purpose of yourself, you kind of are that way. You know, you're like, look at me, man. I'm still wearing baggy sweaters and I'm not embracing the shape. I'm still hiding them. And a lot of people wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But I think I just wanted to be open and real and have more women understand that it's relatable, because they probably see me as this way and I'm shocking them by doing this. And they're like, okay, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's human, you know? She likes big boobies too.
Yeah, right? Who doesn't? Um, so yeah, so let's go even more into your surgery day. So you wake up, what were your like initial feelings and thoughts when you woke up?
I woke up in a chair, lying back, obviously. And I was super high. And I'm not even good on weed. I'm just have that paranoid personality whenever I do anything. So I'm just so ripped and I'm blabbing, and then I'm hungry. So they give me a cracker, and eventually it's just hanging out of my mouth. It's so dry and I fall asleep. And then the nurse is like, oh my God, you can't be falling asleep with food in your mouth. I was just out of it. And I guess they usually give you like 2 hours roughly from the time you wake up, and then you get picked up and you go home the same day. But they were like, yeah, you could just sleep for a few more hours, because they could see I was just out of it, right? But Kate ended up picking me up a few hours later. And they like wheeled me out in a wheelchair, and I stood up and I was just so high. I'm like, how am I going to make it home? And then Kate got me coffee, which made it even worse because now I'm jacked on caffeine and I'm high.
Oh
And
God.
for some weird reason, I pull out my phone and I'm like, hey, Instagram, I'm just got out of surgery. And then I watched it back and I was like, oh my God, I'm so high. who let me post that? Who
Oh, like,
let
I'm
me
so
post?
glad I didn't have social media when I got out of my surgery because I talked my doctor like my mom literally she's like,
Yeah.
Kayla, shut up. Shut up. And I was like, what? Don't you
I
shut up.
had like white crust around my mouth, and I'm like living my best life. But it was just like, so then I get dropped off. I was originally supposed to stay with Kate, and her son got chickenpox. So I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like having new boobs and chickenpox, so I'm gonna opt out of that. And I went and stayed at my brother's place for a night. And my brother's crazy. He's loud. He's really funny. And then I've got nieces that are like 12 and 13. It's a house full.
Yeah.
So I get there. I'm still high. I sleep it off on the couch for a few hours. And then I ended up sleeping basically like that the whole entire night. And my back was so jacked up. And I'll say the first night was pretty rough just in terms of trying to get comfortable, really, right? And my brother was so loud and his kids were loud. And 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, someone drive me home, please. I just want to go home. So I do the seatbelt up and I'm like, right away, I'm like, whoa, this is weird. I got to take the seatbelt off. Everything was just like adjusting. Everything felt weird. So the funny part is I get home and I haven't really looked at them. I have this kind of support bra that links up all in the front, which I'm still wearing. You got to wear it for like 4 to 6 weeks. Today is my 3 weeks, by the way, my 3 weeks post-op. So I get home, I take the bra off and I'm mortified. I'm like, I just paid all this money for those because they don't explain anything really to you, what to expect after. So basically the implants are behind your muscle, your pecs, right in front of the rib cage, basically. So they're really compressed. So you take this implant like this and you cut under and shove them up there, and they're really compressed to your chest. And so you're thinking like they just look weird. They look like squares. So I'm calling the doctor's office because I'm like, why do they look so weird?
Yeah.
And then they start explaining, oh, this is how they look. And then they start explaining the drop and fluff to me. Basically, when the muscle breaks down underneath, the implants go from this tight implant to kind of forming and dropping into place, which obviously creates a more round look. Yeah. And they grow a lot in size. So you kind of come home thinking, well, I paid all this and they're not much bigger. And then a week goes by and they get bigger. And it's like, one of those little things you drop in water and it grows and grows and grows. And you're like, when are these going to stop growing? And apparently it's like, could be anywhere from 3 months to a year, basically, the entire process of healing. So every day seems different to me. Yeah. I kind of went for a natural look. 330 cc's is what I ended up getting, which is quite small. A lot of women start at the 450, 500
So
cc's.
What like roughly bra size is that?
So I have tried on bras, which you're not supposed to because they're so tight and firm. You can't even push them together. So imagine trying to put on a bra, nothing's comfortable. Yeah. So I measure a 31. So I'm a 32A cup before I started, but for some reason I'm a 34 around here now, a 34D. But I also tried on a 32C last week in a different cut and it fit. Everything just looked really jacked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I won't know until I'm at the 12 week mark. But I'm going to say probably a CD cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a lot when you're used to being an A.
Yeah. Well,
and they sit differently on everybody, sometimes they sit high or they sit low or they sit out or they sit in. Yeah. It just depends on your own frame. Yeah. And my biggest setback is having so much muscle on my chest. It's taking a very long time for that to kind of relax and break free so that the implants can.
Yeah, I guess I could see like someone who's athletic it would stretch a little more, I guess. So when you're really not a lot of muscle there, it's probably.
Or over the muscle. A lot of women prefer to go over the muscle for an instant look. Oh, yeah. So behind the muscle, like I said, imagine your chest fully compressed
Mhm.
It just looks really weird.
How, like, do they say anything about, I mean, you were saying it's wouldn't be ideal if you were going to be a bodybuilder, but like obviously I mean, with dirt biking, even like we're picking, there's a lot of chest muscle that you're probably
Yeah.
using regardless when you ride. Do you think that's going to affect it in any way, or do they?
So you can still lift in the gym, your chest weights, but they recommend, for the first 6 months to a year, not doing those pull-ups, push-ups, um, repetitive chest movements. So you pick up your bike, you're good. But if you're sitting there doing, 40 push-ups, you're just constantly stressing out the muscle, right? Your pecs. And before I had the implants, I actually didn't do a lot of chest exercises because I'm naturally so muscular there. And in my shoulders from riding, just this alone, you build so much muscle in your chest and your shoulders. And a lot of times we're hiding that under our jerseys, but like I got some big shoulder caps. Um, so they explained it to me basically, yeah, you want to stay away from that repetitive body weight movement for a good 6 months to a year. Um, and you can have displacement and you can still tear them or rupture basically the cup that they sit in because they cut underneath and they put them behind the muscle. So you have those internal scars, right? The internal tissue, it has to heal and it could take up to a year. So yeah, they highly recommend basically that you're not doing any crazy powerlifting anymore long term, right?
Yeah.
And the riding, I asked about it because, sometimes with the stunts or throwing myself off the enduro pretty much weekly, and they said it would be fine. It's those repetitive movements.
Okay. Yeah, I was
And
gonna.
honestly, listen to your body, they say too, right? Um, I'm allowed to go back to the gym and kind of continue on with normal activity at 6 weeks. I'm
Okay.
actually allowed back in the gym at 3 weeks now for lower body, no weights. So if I'm doing lunges, 10 pounds max to
Yeah.
combined, so 5 pound dumbbells. But then there's other surgeons that don't go on that. They're like, oh yeah, just go back to the gym as soon as possible. Like if you go on different surgeons' websites, they all have their own kind of procedures and layouts. My surgeon has been very strict, like, don't be doing this, don't be doing that. Stay in this bra, wear it every single night consistently. Don't take it off for 2 hours like other doctors tell you to do, right? No wire bras for a year. Some doctors recommend wearing a wire bra all the time to keep them up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of conflicting information out there. So I think the best bet is to listen to your body, right?
Yeah. And I'm wondering too, because you went through a school, like they're going through what the guidelines for your schooling is. And like they probably are the strictest guidelines and they have to say those things because it
Yeah.
probably is the most recommended, but it's like when a surgeon gets into their own practice, sometimes they
Yes.
falls, but yeah,
Yeah.
they want to make sure
So
that
I ended up actually getting my surgery at Campbell or Canby Surgical Center, which is so these students are at UBC, but you're actually in the same surgical center as everyone else that gets implants. But yeah, they have a different practice for sure. Even the main surgeon that I had, Esther Beauville was her name. She's the one that practices mostly on reconstructive surgeries, like I said, for breast cancer patients. She's very, very strict. Like I remember showing her a couple pictures, and I showed her a picture of someone that I thought had great boobs,
yeah,
and she was like, "Oh, darling, those are awful. You do not want those. You want to be natural. Those are the farthest from that." Like she was so open and honest with me, and I was just like, "Okay, all right. I value her opinion." But I think she was looking at me from that athletic standpoint too, not wanting to overdo it. Like, I explained I'm a tomboy. I just want to feel a little bit feminine, but I still want to be able to huck myself off bikes. So I
yeah,
think she was kind of gauging it at that.
yeah. That's a good surgeon if they can like tell you,
Yeah, she was awesome.
be real with
And
you.
like when I lifted my shirt the first day, I was like, oh my God, I wish I went way bigger. But now that they're settling, I'm so happy that I didn't, to be
Yeah,
honest. I'm like, these are perfect for my frame and what I want to do. And but it's a long journey, I think, and an emotional one too, because your body is changing again every week, right? You're waking up and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, what's new today? And things are lopsided and one drops faster than the other. And you're like, oh my God, is this one going to be down here and this one going to be up here forever? And just a lot of stress in the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I could see like there'd be a lot of like high moments and then a lot of like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what did I do moments.
Yes. But overall, I'm really, really happy. And the other thing was I ended up opting out of all drugs. I
Oh,
told you I'm not very good on them. And being alone, I didn't want to be ripping around the house high here on my on my own. So I just took Tylenol, 2 Tylenol every 8 hours. And then by day 3, I was off of everything. I think day 3. So it
wow.
was great for me. It was just like a pretty simple process, I thought.
How is the comfort level right now? Like, do you feel
So
achy?
I'm sleeping on my side now and I'm able to, like, look at me, I can do aerobics. um, but like there's certain things like stretching actually feels weird. Some things definitely feel weird. And this morning I was cleaning snow off the front window of my truck and I climbed up on the tire to and I definitely felt you're flexing those muscles. And as you heal, it feels weird. It's like when those pecs flex, they push the implant out.
Oh,
So you can actually feel the implants, when you move them. So it's kind of adjusting to a foreign object in your body.
yeah. How are the scars healing? Like, is it?
So on my arm, I'll show you, I've got that inside scar. Oh, can you see it? Which is really thick. But
Yeah,
on the outside of my arm, can you see how light that is?
yeah.
So it's very similar to this.
Okay.
And it's right under here, and they're so tiny. They're like this.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
they're very tiny. So they're about like that underneath. And then they basically just slip it under there and stitch it from the inside and tape you up and everything. So every day I have a shower and then I take it off and put the new tape underneath. But everything's healed for me. I've just got like 2 strings on the side that look like fishing line hanging out, where on your 4 week they kind of just pull those out. It's the
Okay.
rest of those internal stitches. But it's crazy how fast it's just light pink. And I'm a redhead. I'm fair. You're a redhead. We're
Here, I
fair
guess.
toned. So I think our scars are kind of nice that way. They're kind of like
Yeah.
a light pinkish color.
They're,
So I was worried about that because I'm like, they have another thing what's called an anchor lift. So they cut you underneath and then up through to the nipple.
yeah, I've seen that.
And that's very common. And I think that's kind of the image women get when they think about breast implants is, oh my God, I'm going to be butchered. But
Yeah.
as soon as you got that fold under there, you see nothing. And
Yeah.
I've lifted my arms to kind of look at it too. And being 3 weeks, I can't imagine in a year what it's going to look like, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say, what would you say to a woman listening to this who may be considering some form of plastic surgery?
Yeah. I had tons of women reach out when I posted it, which is kind of was my hopes. I wanted to be able, I mean, more or less I shared it because I wanted a lot of information and feedback from women. And I was praying that it would be in the enduro scene because I'm like, well, how do you get over those boulders with that set of boulders? All those kind of questions. So it worked out in my favor. And like I said, there was a lot of women that were sending me photos and like their pre and post op photos and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool. And then on the other side of it, I had women like, I've been contemplating this for 10 years and, I have 3 kids and this and that, and they're deflated. I'd like to fill them up. Just tons of things that I did not expect from women, and multiple reasons. And most of it was in regards to themselves, just wanting to feel confident about themselves. So I think if you're in a position where you've read up on everything and you can accept the pros and cons to it, like anything, buying a dirt bike, you could break an arm. You might not break an arm. You might just have a good time. Same thing with boobs, there's pros and cons to everything. Could you develop an autoimmune disorder? Yes, you could, especially if you already have an existing one or you're not going into the surgery healthy. So that's a big thing I recommend is getting healthy before you go in. Diet is a huge role. And I had barely any swelling. I've recovered. I was back to work in 6 days. I didn't take the medication. And I honestly contribute most of that to my diet and the way I, live my life. So that's a big thing. Make sure you're healthy before you go into it. And then what are the reasons why you want to do it? Like you want to do it for yourself. I gave you my reasons. We all have a different reasoning behind it. And I think a lot of women are ashamed to talk about it or embarrassed. Um, and I kind of think that's why I want to talk about it too, is so more women feel comfortable and open about it, right? We don't have to feel sexualized about everything we do in our lives. Um, I had a lot of men replying to it. Some were very mature and like, hey, my wife had a baby. She did this, best thing she ever did. Pray for our sex life. A lot of TMI stuff too, right? And then there was, oh, when's the OnlyFans coming out? So there's those immature boys, as we call them.
Yeah.
So just make sure you're doing it for you, right? And if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it. But I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of, you know?
I like that. Yeah. Eliminate the shame and figure out like what the reason for yourself is.
Yeah, we look at our bodies more than anyone else, like for you, with your nose, you're in the mirror every day doing your makeup, constantly looking at that.
Yeah.
And every day you're thinking, God, I wish I could change this little bump, or whatever the case may be. Nobody sees that. People see our imperfections as beauty, but we don't.
Yeah.
There's certain things, especially when you're dating someone and they point those, oh, I love this about you. And you're like, oh my God, I hate that.
Yeah.
Don't stare at it. Stop. We don't see what other people see, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. Well, I'm just so happy that we had this conversation, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's going to be a really good one for women and men and anyone who's thinking about different things. And yeah, whether you want to do something to your body or you don't, or you just know a friend, I think listening to people's stories, being supportive.
Yeah. And as women, that's a
Understand.
big thing. We don't need to be judgmental or make women feel ashamed of doing any of this. It's kind of like going to dance. When we show up to dance, the doors are closed and our dance teacher's like, strip down into whatever you want. You want to wear a thong, you don't
Yeah,
even want to wear a bra and just wear tassels, you do you. And that doesn't get shared outside of the dance studio. It's just to make us bond and feel comfortable about our bodies and the situations, non-judgmental space.
yeah,
We need to outgrow that as women and support each other. Women are women's worst critics, I'll say. It's not so much men versus women, it's more us judging other women. We all do it at some point. Oh, she did this or she did that.
uh,
She must be insecure. So
and
it's
I
good to talk about these things, right?
it is, and I just want to get out too, because I think one of the struggles that I have, being more of a tomboy girl and like growing up with brothers and a father who is like, you're basically a son to me. I I've always battled with like, when I go out and be like more girly, I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna look bad? Is someone gonna talk about me? And just stripping us down from like us being like, I feel like we're in more of a tomboy community as female riders. Uh,
Yes.
but like, I really want to like push the feminine beauty, the like that we can be both, and we don't
Yeah.
have to be always covered up. We don't always have to be boyish, and um, we're all women at the end of the day. It's like, just we shouldn't be
Yeah.
shaming each other for wanting to do what women want to do, which is
Yeah. And I mean that
feel
social
confident and feel feminine and dance and look pretty and
yeah. Yeah. I mean, will I
decorate,
do a wheelie in
decorate
a
your house
bikini?
like Martha Stewart.
Yeah. So, sorry, I was saying, will I do a wheelie in a bikini? Probably. I'm but as a woman, we always feel like that social pressure too. Like, oh, if we post this, is someone going to be like, oh, you're just doing it for the likes, your tits are
Yeah,
out. And
yeah,
it's, yeah. So, I mean, we have to deal with a lot as women, judging other women. And, we get it a lot in the scene when you pose with your bike and, oh, can you ride? Or you
yeah.
just posing. There's just so much of it online these days. But
But you know what? You've definitely earned it. So whatever you post from here on, I ain't
you're
judging.
going to see some bikini wheelies, you guys.
You can
I'm
literally post that.
you see some big old sweaters.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, Crystal, I think that wraps up this episode. That was pretty good. And yeah, I think if there's ever any more crazy, wild stories we want to get into, this was fun.
Yeah,
And
that was good. We touched base on a lot of things and it wasn't too much. It wasn't. So it
no,
was a good experience for me because I have not been willing to do podcasts with anyone. I've been asked multiple times and I've just not been open to it. So thank you. You're a great host. And you're relatable, right? I like that you're doing the same things as I am. You've had the surgery, you're kind of a tomboy, you're dancing, you're riding bikes. So we're breaking molds.
We are. We are.
And supporting women. So it was awesome doing this with you.
Thank you. That means a lot. Well, have a good rest of your night. And yeah, I'll let you know when it's kind of wrapped up and ready to post. And yeah, thank you again.
Okay. Have a good one.
Bye, girl.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Wide Open Podcast on Spotify and follow at Kayla Louise on Instagram. That's at Kela Louise. And look forward to more episodes.